One day, Yochanan, the son of Shaul, said to the young men carrying his armor, "Come, let's go across to the garrison of the Plishtim on the other side." But he didn't tell his father. Shaul was waiting at the far gate of Giva under the pomegranate tree in Migron. The force with him numbered about 600 men. Achiah, the son of Achtuv, Kavod's brother, the son of Pinchas, son of Eli, the Kohen of Adonai in Shiloh, was carrying a ritual vest. No one knew that Yochanan had gone. Between the passes-by which Yochanan was trying to cross to the garrison of the Plishtim, there was a rocky spur on one side and another rocky spur on the other side. The name of the one was Botzetz, and on the other, Sini. The one spur rose up on the north in front of Michmas, and the other side and south in front of Giva. Yochanan said to his armor-bearer, Come on, let's go across the garrison on these uncircumcised people. Maybe Adonai will do something for us, since Adonai can rescue with a few as easily as with many." His armor-bearer replied, "Do everything you think you should. I'm with you. Whatever you decide." Yochanan said, "Here, we'll cross over and these men let them know we're here. If they say, 'Wait till we come to you,' we'll stand still where we are and not go up to them. But if they say, 'Come up to us,' we'll go on up. And that will be the sign that Adonai has given us victory over them." So both of them let their presence be known in the garrison of the Plishtim. The Plishtim said, "Look, some Hebrews coming out of the holes they've been hiding in." Then the men of the garrison said to Yochanan and his armor-bearer, "Come up to us. We want to show you something." Yochanan told his armor-bearer, "Come on up after me, for Adonai has handed them over to Israel." Yonatan climbed up, using his hands as well as his feet, with his armor-bearer behind him. The Plishtim fell before Yochanan, and his armor-bearer following him finished them off. That first slaughter of about 20 men was accomplished by Yonatan and his armor-bearer in a space only half as long as one side of the area a pair of oxen could plow in a day, about 200 yards. There was a panic in the field among all the Plishtim. Likewise, the garrison and the raiding party panicked. Besides all this, there was an earthquake. Thus it grew into panic caused by God. Shaul's men on watch in Givat Benjamin could see the camp scattering and running in all directions. Shaul ordered the forces with him to order the roll and see who was missing. So they called the roll and found that Yonatan and his armor-bearer not present. Shaul told Achiah, "Bring the ark of God here," for at that time the ark of God was with the people of Israel. But while Shaul was talking to the Kohen, the uproar in the camp of the Plishtim continued and kept getting louder. Shaul said to the Kohen, "Put your hand down." Shaul and the entire force was with him assembled and went to battle. They found the Plishtim all fighting each other in utter confusion. The Hebrews from the surrounding countryside, who had previously been with the Plishtim and had gone up with them into the camp desert and went out over to Israel with Shaul and Yonatan, likewise, on hearing that the Plishtim were fleeing, all the men of Israel who had hidden themselves in the hills of Ephraim pursued them in battle. So Adonai saved Israel that day, and the battle spread as far as Beeth Even. Israel's soldiers had been driven to exhaustion that day. But Shaul issued this warning to the people: "A curse on any man who eats any food until evening, when I have finished taking vengeance on my enemies." So none of his people even tasted food. Now the people came to a forest where there was a honeycomb on the ground. When the people had entered the forest, they saw there the honeycomb with honey dripping out. But no one put his hand to his mouth, because the people feared the oath. But Yonatan hadn't heard his father charging the people with the oath. So he put out the end of his staff in his hand, dipped it into the honeycomb, and raised it to his mouth, whereas his eyes lit up. But one of the people said in response, "Your father strictly charged the people with an oath, a curse on any man who eats any food today." Even though the people are fainting with hunger, Yonatan answered, "My father has brought trouble to the land. Just look like how my eyes have lit up because I tasted a little of this honey. How much greater would be the slaughter of the Plishtim had been today. Then, if the people had eaten freely of the spoil they found with their enemies." That day, they had attacked the Plishtim from Michmas to Ailan, but the people were very exhausted. So the people rushed at the spoil, seizing sheep, cows, and calves, slaughtering them to the ground, and eating the flesh with the blood. Shaul was told, "Look how the people are sinning against Adonai, eating with the blood." He said, "You have not kept faith. Roll a big stone to me immediately." Now Shaul said, "Go around the other people and tell them, each of you is to bring his cow and his sheep and slaughter them here, then eat. Don't sin against Adonai by eating with the blood." So each person brought his animal with him by evening and killed it there. Shaul erected an altar to Adonai. It was the first altar that he erected to Adonai. Shaul said, "Let's go after the Plishtim by night. We'll plunder them until dawn. We won't leave one of them alive." They answered, "Do whatever seems good to you." But the Kohen said, "Let's approach God here." Shaul counseled God, "Should I go in pursuit of the Plishtim? Will you hand them over to Israel?" But he didn't answer him that day. Shaul said, "Come here, all you heads of the people. Think carefully. Who has committed this sin today? For as Adonai, Israel's deliverer, lives, even if it proves that Yonatan, my son, he must be put to death." But no one among all the people answered him. Then he said to all Israel, "You be on one side, and I and Yonatan, my son, will be on the other side." The people replied to Shaul, "Do what seems good to you." Shaul said to Adonai, God of Israel, "Who is right?" Yonatan and Shaul were chosen by lot, and the people were free. Shaul said, "Cast lots between me and Yonatan, my son." Yonatan was chosen. And Shaul said to Yonatan, "Tell me what you did." Yonatan told him, "Yes, I tasted a little honey with the end of the staff in my hand. Here I am. I'm ready to die." Shaul said, "May God do the same to me and more also, if you are not put to death, Yonatan." The people said to Shaul, "Must Yonatan die, who has accomplished this great deliverance in Israel? Heaven forbid. As Adonai lives, not one hair of his head will fall to the ground, but he worked with God today." In this way, the people rescued Yonatan, so that he didn't die. Then Shaul stopped pursuing the Plishtim, and the Plishtim returned to their own territory. So Shaul took over the rulership of Israel. He fought against all his enemies on every side, against Moab and the people of Ammon, Edom, and the kings of Zovah and the Plishtim. No matter which way he turned, he defeated them. He demonstrated his strength by attacking Amalek, and he saved Israel from the power of those who were plundering them. The sons of Shaul were Yonatan, Yishvi, and Milcashu, while the names of the two daughters were these: the name of the older, Merav, and the younger, Milcah. Shaul's wife was named Achaniam, and the daughter of Achamietz. The commander of the army was named Avner, the son of Ner, Shaul's uncle. Kish was the father of Shaul, and Ner the father of Abner, the son of Abiel. As long as the son lived, there was a bitter war against the Plishtim. Whenever Shaul saw any strong or courageous man, he recruited him to his service. Shmuel said to Shaul, "Adonai sent me to anoint you king over his people, over Israel. Now listen to what Adonai has said." Now listen to Adonai, what he has to say. Here is what Adonai Svaot says. "I remember what Amalek did to Israel, how they fought against Israel, and when they were coming up from Egypt. Now go and attack Amalek, and completely destroy everything they have. Don't spare them, but kill men, women, children, babies, cows, sheep, camels, donkeys." Shaul summoned the people and reviewed them in Telaim, 200,000 foot soldiers, with another 10,000 men from Yehuda. Shaul arrived at the city of Amalek and lay in wait in the valley. Shaul said to Kini, "Go away, withdraw, leave your homes there with Emki. Otherwise I might destroy you along with them, even though you were kind to all the people of Israel when they came out of Egypt. So the Keni went away from among the Amaleki. Then Shaul attacked Amalek, starting in Havilah and continuing toward Shur, at the border of Egypt. He took Agag, the king of Amalek, alive, but he completely destroyed the people, putting them to the sword. However, Shaul and the people spared Agag, along with the best of the sheep, cattle, and even second best, also the lambs and everything that was good. They weren't inclined to destroy these things, but everything that was worthless or weak was completely destroyed. Then the word of Adonai came to Shmuel. I regret setting up Shaul as king, because he has turned back from following me and hasn't obeyed my orders. This made Shmuel very sad, so that he cried to Adonai all night. Shmuel got up early in the morning to meet Shaul. However, Shmuel was told Shaul came to Carmel to set up a monument for himself there. But now he was left and is on his way to Gilgal. Shmuel went to Shaul. Shaul said to him, May Adonai bless you. I have done what Adonai ordered. But Shmuel answered, If so, why do I hear sheep beating and cows mooing? Shaul said, They brought them from the Amaleki, because the people spared the best, the sheep and the cattle, to sacrifice to Adonai your God. But we completely destroyed the rest. Then Shmuel said to Shaul, Stop. I'm going to tell you what Adonai has said to me last night. He said, Speak. Shmuel then said, You may be small in your own sight, but you are the head of the tribes of Israel. Adonai anointed you king over Israel. Now Adonai sent you on a mission and told you, Go and completely destroy the Amalek, those sinners. Keep making war on them until they have been exterminated. Why did you seize the spoil instead of paying attention to what Adonai said? From Adonai's viewpoint, you have done an evil thing. Shaul said to Shmuel, I did too pay attention to what Adonai said, and I carried out the mission on which Adonai sent me. I brought back Agag, king of Amalek, and I completely destroyed Amalek. But the people took some of the spoil and the best of the sheep and cattle set aside for destruction to sacrifice to Adonai, your God, in Gilgal. Shmuel said, Does Adonai take as much pleasure in burnt offerings and sacrifices as in obeying what Adonai says? Surely obeying is better than sacrifice, and heeding orders than the fat of rams. For rebellion is like the sin of sorcery, stubbornness like the crime of idolatry. Because you have rejected the word of Adonai, he too has rejected you as king. Shaul said to Shmuel, I have sinned. I violated the order of Adonai and your words too, because I was afraid of the people and listened to what they said. Now please, pardon my sin and come back with me so that I can worship Adonai. But Shmuel said to Shaul, I will not go back with you because you have rejected the word of Adonai, and Adonai has rejected you as king over Israel. As Shmuel was turning around to leave, he took hold of the hem of his cloak and tore it. Shmuel said to him, Adonai has torn your kingdom of Israel away from you today and given it to a fellow countryman of yours who is better than you. Moreover, the Eternal One of Israel will not lie or change his mind, because he isn't mere human being subject to changing his mind. Then Shaul said, I have sinned, but in spite of that, please show me respect now before the leaders of my people and before Israel by coming back with me so that I can worship Adonai your God. So Shmuel followed Shaul back, and Shaul worshipped Adonai. Then Shmuel said, Bring Agag, the king of Amalek, here to me. Agag came to him in chains and said, Without doubt, mine will be a bitter death. Shmuel said, Just as your sword has left women childless, so will your mother be left childless among women. Then Shmuel cut Agag in pieces before Adonai in Gilgal. Shmuel returned to Ramah, and Shmuel went up to the house of Devath Shaul. Never again did Shmuel see Shaul until the day he died. But Shmuel grieved over Shaul, and Adonai regretted that he made Shaul king over Israel. Adonai said to Shmuel, No longer are you going to go on grieving for Shaul, now that I have rejected him as king over Israel. Fill your horn with oil, and set out. I will send you to Yashi, the Bet Lachmi, because I have chosen myself a king from among his sons. Shmuel said, How can I go? If Shaul hears of it, he will have me killed. Adonai said, Take a female cow with you and say, I have come to sacrifice to Adonai. Summon Yashi to the sacrifice. I will tell you what to do, and you are to anoint for me the person I will point out to you. Shmuel did what Adonai said and arrived at Bet Lechem. The leaders of the city came trembling to meet him and asked, Are you coming in peace? He answered, In peace. I have come to sacrifice to Adonai. Consecrate yourselves and come with me to the sacrifice. He consecrated Yashi and his sons and summoned them to the sacrifice. When they had come, he looked at Eliab and said, This has to be Adonai's anointed one, here before him. But Adonai said to Shmuel, Don't pay attention to how he looks or how tall he is, because I have rejected him. Adonai doesn't see the way humans see. Humans look at the outward appearance, but Adonai looks at the heart. Then Yashi called Abinadab and presented him to Shmuel, but he said, Adonai hasn't chosen this one either. Yisha presented Shammah. Again, Samuel said, Adonai hasn't chosen this one either. Yisha presented 7 of his sons to Shmuel, but Shmuel told Yashi, Adonai has not chosen these. Are all your sons here? Shmuel asked Yashi. He replied, There is still the youngest. He is out there tending the sheep. Shmuel said to Yashi, Send and bring him back, because we won't sit down to eat until he gets here. He sent and brought him in. With ruddy cheeks and red hair and bright eyes, he was a good-looking fellow. Adonai said, Stand up and anoint him. He is the one. Shmuel took the horn of oil and anointed him there in the presence of his brothers. From that day on, the spirit of Adonai would fall upon David with power. So Shmuel sent out and went to Ramah. Now the spirit of Adonai had left Shaul instead. An evil spirit from Adonai would suddenly come over him. Shaul's servant said to him, Do you notice that there's an evil spirit from God that suddenly comes over you? Let our Lord now command your servant who are here with you to look for a man who knows how to play the lyre. Then if the evil spirit from God comes over you, he will play, and it will do you good. Shaul said to his servants, Find me a man who can play well, and bring him to me. One of the young men answered, Here, I've seen one of the sons of Yashi, the Bet Lechemi, who knows how to play. He is a brave soldier, he can fight. He chooses his words carefully, and he's pleasant looking. Besides, Adonai is with him. So Shaul sent messengers to Yashi, saying, Send me David, your son, who is out with the sheep. Yashi took a donkey, loaded it with bread, a skin of wine, and a kid, and sent them with David, his son, to Shaul. David came to Shaul and presented himself to him. Shaul took great liking to him and made him his armor-bearer. Shaul sent the message to Yashi, Please let David stay here in my service, because I'm pleased with him. So it was that whenever the evil spirit from God came over Shaul, David would take the lyre and play it. The result, Shaul would find relief and feel better as the evil spirit left him.